Hey guys, we're talking about different types of quadrilaterals. Now, the word quadrilateral is just a polygon that has four sides. Quad means four. However, there's different types of quadrilaterals and they have different properties. So, the most basic one that we're going to talk about is a parallelogram. A parallelogram is when you have both pairs of opposite sides parallel. Both pairs of opposite sides are also congruent to each other. Both pairs of opposite angles are congruent to each other. The diagonals bisect each other. There's so much going on. That's the basics of a parallelogram. When you have a parallelogram and you include four right angles into it, then it's a rectangle. So a parallelogram with four right angles is now a rectangle. All the properties of a parallelogram are a rectangle, just included with the four angles. If a parallelogram is a rectangle and all four sides are congruent to each other, then it's a square. A square is a special type of rectangle. A square is actually what happens when a rhombus is just a parallelogram with four congruent sides. Again, a rhombus is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. When you mix that with a rectangle, a parallelogram with right angles, you then make a square. So a square is a rhombus, a rectangle, a parallelogram, all that good stuff. When you have a quadrilateral where only one pair of opposite sides are parallel, the other two sides are not parallel, that is what's called a trapezoid. If the two sides that are not parallel are of equal length, they're congruent, that's called an isosceles trapezoid. And if you have a trapezoid that has two right angles in it, that's called a right trapezoid. Let's take a look. The directions say determine if the quadrilateral is a square, rectangle, rhombus, trapezoid, isosceles trapezoid, parallelogram, or more than one of those names. So over here on the left, I see everything that would be for a parallelogram. Opposite sides are congruent. That's in a parallelogram, but I also see I have right angles. So not only is it a parallelogram, but it's also a rectangle. Because again, a rectangle is just a parallelogram with four right angles. In the next figure I see, I have a parallelogram. Opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are congruent. I don't see those right angles, and I do see that not all the sides are the same. That means it's just simply a parallelogram. I know it's not a rhombus because all four sides are not congruent. It would not be a trapezoid because a trapezoid only has one pair of opposite sides parallel, and this has both pairs. Next one. This figure is a quadrilateral. I only see one pair of opposite sides being parallel, and the two sides that are not parallel are congruent to each other. Well, if only one pair of sides is parallel, that's a trapezoid. And if the other two sides are congruent to each other, it's not just any trapezoid, it's what's called an isosceles trapezoid. Just like an isosceles triangle has two congruent sides, an isosceles trapezoid has two congruent sides. For the next one, I see that opposite sides are congruent. It's a parallelogram. I see that I have right angles. Ooh, it is a rectangle, but all the opposite sides are not actually just congruent to the opposite side, they're congruent to each other. When you have a quadrilateral, all four sides are the same. That's what a rhombus is. And then if you have right angles, not only is it a rhombus, but it's also a rectangle. So it's a parallelogram, it's a rectangle, it's a square, and it's a rhombus. It's all of those things together. And then our last two, over here on the left, I don't see any right angles. I do see opposite sides are congruent, so that means it is a parallelogram. And because all four sides are of equal length, the measures are the same, I can say that it is a rhombus. And the last one pair of opposite sides is parallel, which means it's a trapezoid. And all I actually wrote was trapezoid, but what I'm missing is the fact that since you see these two right angles there, I can call it a right trapezoid, not just any trapezoid. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.